Namaste to all. Today's topic is problem based learning. Myself Dr. Vidya Bhat, professor in Department of Prosthodontics, will be telling you a bit about the problem based learning. This presentation is from Yenepoya Dental College. Myself being the coordinator of Dental Education Unit 2, I thought let me talk a little bit on problem based learning and how it can be applied to medical education or dental education. So Churchill once famously said, I am always ready to learn, although I do not always like being taught. So today's learning objectives are, you will be able to define what is problem based learning, the reasons for using PBL or in health education. We will also know what are the advantages and disadvantages of PBL, and also we will compare the PBL with traditional type of education. So what is problem based learning? It is a learning format which challenges students to learn through engagement in a real problem. It also simultaneously develops problem solving strategies and disciplinary knowledge bases and skills. Here problem is not some problem which is in regular life, but it is a difficult but interesting matter which triggers one's curiosity and motivates a desire to understand or find a solution for. So, when there is a problem, we have to find a solution for that. By definition, Barrows and Tamlin were the original people who defined PBL as the learning which results from the process of working toward the understanding of or resolution of a problem. So, that it is a process where the student learns how to solve a problem. It is also a learning methodology based on real life problems in which the focus is on the student and not the teacher. It is a learning method based on the principle of using problems as a starting point for the acquisition and also integration of new knowledge. So, student acquires knowledge and also will assimilate all of that and make his own new knowledge. So, PBL actually originated from a curriculum reform by the medical faculty at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland in the late 1950s. And McMaster University in Canada further evolved the practice of PBL in their medical school program. Later it was taken up to many universities across the world. So, let us see what are the problems with traditional education usually. Students are disenchanted. They are usually bored with their education because it forces them to memorize lot of information, and usually it seems much irrelevant because they will not be able to connect the information in the medical or the dental school to the world outside. So, students often forget much of what they learned because whatever they are asked to remember cannot be applied to the problems which they face in real world. So, and also traditional classrooms do not prepare the students to work with others as a team. So, who and why should we solve problems? Actually, who should be solving the problems and why should students solve them? And can problem solving be really be taught? Let us see each one of them. So, first let us see what is problem based learning and what is problem solving. Problem based learning is the process of acquiring new knowledge based on recognition of a need to learn. The student knows, okay, I do not know this item, I do not know this information, I know I need to learn something to acquire more. Whereas problem solving is already so many things are known to the student and they will come at a decision because of previous knowledge what they have and whatever reasoning they do. So, they come at a conclusion how to solve the problem. So, problem based learning, there is a first the student recognizes what is his lacking in him, what is the knowledge need to be acquired, and then goes on to acquire those extra knowledge. Whereas problem solving is he already has a knowledge, but then he has to do some reasoning to come at a solution. So, this is an interesting pyramid. So, when student hears a lecture, hardly 10% is retained in him, but when they read, at least 10% of retention is there. If they see it made more interesting with some audiovisual aids, at least 20% of the matter is retained in the students. And when you demonstrate something, 30% of the information is stored in the students. And when you discuss, when there is active discussion between the teacher, students and others, there will be 50% of the knowledge retained. But when they practice doing it, when the student has to do, when you demonstrate something and then they do it themselves, at least 75% of the knowledge is retained. And at least 90% is retained when they teach others. So, traditional educational approach do not lead to high rate of knowledge retention, because most material learned through lectures is often forgotten. So, some studies have shown that 90% of the students forget everything that they have been told in 90 days, because the motivation is very low in the classrooms. Let us see some of the principles of adult learning, because we are usually handling students who are consider themselves to be adults. So, they are motivated to learn by perceiving what is relevant to them. It is based on their previous experience, and they get motivated when it is participatory and actively involves them, and when real life problems are focused on, and it should be designed so that they can take responsibility for their own learning. Also, it should be immediately applied in practice. What they learn today, they should be able to do it tomorrow, only then they can get more involved in learning. It also involves cycles of action and reflection, and based on mutual trust and respect. So, let us see the unique aspects of PBL. It occurs in context of authentic tasks, issues and problems, and it is aligned with real world concerns. It also stimulates the students to take responsibility for their own learning. It is not that the teacher teaches them and they try to understand, but they comprehend the information for themselves. There are very few lectures, and there is no structured sequence of assigned readings. The students are not required to read the first chapter first and the 10th chapter and then at the end the last chapter. They can read anywise that they want. They have to just gather the information what is needed for their understanding. So, it is basically a student centered learning process, because there is a fundamental shift from a focus on teaching to a focus on learning. This learning has to be more important than how much is taught to them. So, there is a authentic problem solving to engage the students and also enhance their learning and motivation. So, it places students in the active role of problem solvers. The teachers or the facilitators will be just act as a passive guide. So, they will be confronted with typical and clinical cases that they are likely to face as future professionals. So, real life case scenarios will be shown to them, and then they will have to think, okay, what I have to do, how will I come to a solution, or how will I treat this patient, and those things. So, future professionals are being molded. It also fosters collaboration among students, because there is lot of teamwork which has to be done. Each student is assigned some work, or they try to find out the information for others. So, there is no indifference, they have to teamwork with each other. It also promotes effective reasoning and self-directed learning, and by self-directed learning they say motivation for lifelong learning. It also encourages interdisciplinary learning, that is dental students may collaborate with the medical students or with the pharmacy students to address complex cases that require multifaceted approach. Suppose it requires a cardiac patient to be treated in a dental setup, then they have to meet the medical experts, take their opinion, take the required information from them, and so there is an interdisciplinary learning. There is also integration of basic and clinical sciences, because PBL will help in bridging the gap between theoretical knowledge and its practical application in patient care. The student will know, okay, when I know the respiratory system better, only then I will be able to know what is the cycle behind that, what is the treatment procedures for that. So, the basic knowledge, the anatomy, physiology and those things will be properly understood, and how to apply it in practical medicine. It also promotes critical thinking and problem solving, because the students have to analyze data, identify the problems and generate solutions. So, they do not have to memorize anything and they have to think beyond the regular classroom. There is also a lot of small group discussions which happens, because usually it is a group of 6 to 8 students who are involved in one PBL sessions. They have to meet, discuss and solve the cases. So, each case is designed to cover specific learning objectives. It is not that a single PBL session will cover the entire portion, but for specific learning objectives there are different case scenarios which have to be designed. Usually it is authentic clinical cases which are presented to the students. So, the patient case history can be given, or the patient's radiographs can be given, dental casts can be given. All these will be trigger for the students to think for a solution. It also has student centered learning, because they identify the learning objectives from the case. They know, okay, I do not know these many things, I have to learn so many information needed. They will research the relevant information, develop the hypothesis and also formulate the treatment plan. So, there is a independent learning and self motivation which occurs. So, Franklin famously said, tell me and I forget, teach me and I may remember, but involve me and I learn. So, what are the different skills which develop in PBL are, the students think critically, they analyze and try to solve the real world problems, they find, evaluate and use appropriate learning resources, knowledge and skills. They learn to work cooperatively in teams. So, all are equal in that team, though we assign a chairman and a scribe, they are all to work as a team. They also learn to have good communication skills, and also bit of leadership roles are promoted in the students. Other generic skills are like listening, recording, writing, respect for colleagues' views are also encouraged in PBL. The advantages of PBL are, students enjoy the process of learning. It is a challenging program because they are motivated to learn by a need to understand and solve clinical problems. The relevance of information is very apparent to them, because they know only if I learn this, I will be able to solve this problem. The advantages, it is in a mnemonic like BRAIN, brain. So, you can notice that it builds communication skill, reinforces interpersonal and leadership skills, augments self learning and also improves problem solving and critical thinking skills. Also, it nurtures the research skills. So, motivation to solve problems becomes a motivation to learn. Only when the students know, okay, with my knowledge I can solve this problem, they are eager to learn more. So, it is not about what teachers cover, but it is about what students discover. The teacher may think, okay, I have to cover all of this portion, but the student has to ultimately discover what he has to learn. So, the advantages for teachers, the teaching becomes exciting because each day it is a small group which is coming and lot of interaction happens. It enriches the student-teacher relationship, augments student-centered learning, connects the disciplinary knowledge to real world, because it is all the theory which is applied to the real world situations, and also heightens the in-depth comprehension among students. But not all are advantages. PBL has its own limitations too, because it is time consuming. Sometimes there may be an information overload. It is also research intensive, that is more staff are required, more space is required to conduct. It is not the traditional classroom. We need to have PBL classes where it is like a boardroom which has to have the 6 to 8 members present. They have to make notes, they have to talk to each other. So, it is more facilities are required to conduct a PBL. And also the role of instructor is limited. Anyone can go and be there, give the notes to them and ask them to continue with their discussions. There is nothing like a teacher who is giving all the information. And it needs lot of structural changes and attitudinal changes also, because a teacher can't tell in my days I have learnt like this, the same thing will continue, we will have to adjust to the new norms. And also the grading the students is very difficult in PBL, because what to grade, whether to grade their communication skills or whether to grade the information what they got. So grading students becomes very difficult. So to briefly concise between the teaching style and the pros and cons. In the traditional teaching, it's lectures and tutorials, whereas in the PBL it is student centered approach. The students work in teams to find the different case scenarios, and they undertake some their own study and then again discuss back in the seminars. Whereas in the traditional teaching, they learn only what has been taught to them, or the teacher tells, okay, this is important, you learn this, and next day they may come and answer a few things. But in PBL, though it has lot of pros, that is early clinical exposures there, and there is less contact time. The teacher is with the students for hardly say 10 to 20 minutes. After that, the students are supposed to discuss with each other and find out new information. And but the cons are, there is no standardized approach. You can not say this class has to be taught like this. For each problem there is a different approach, and success depends on quality of the facilitator, requires lot of self motivation. Only when the student thinks, okay, I know this is important, I have to learn, only then they get motivated and the PBL can be successful. But sometimes it could lead to gaps in scientific understanding also. They may not learn the basic, they will just jump to the last conclusion part and just try to get an understanding of that, but they may not have a thorough knowledge. So there are some cons also for PBL. So in traditional learning, it told what we need to know, then we have to memorize it, and then finally a problem is assigned to illustrate how to use it. Okay, you have all this knowledge, now solve this problem. Whereas in PBL, first a problem is assigned, then the student identifies what he needs to know, then learn and apply it to solve the problem. So then he has to gather the information how to solve the problem. Not that some tools are given and then made to form something, but finally a product is given, that is, a problem is assigned, and then the student has to find the tools to solve that problem. So also there is something called as project based learning, because it is some research project or some problem has to be solved. It is cross curricular problem. It usually lasts longer, maybe 2 months or 6 months or 1 year, and steps can be vague. It is usually ends with a product or performance. Whereas problem based learning is usually a single subject. It lasts for a week or less, because for one class we have 2 classes. One is the first class where the problem is given. After that, 1 week or 10 days time is given where they have to find out the answers for those. Usually it will be fictitious scenarios. You don't give the entire case report to the student, but some of the things only, and it ends with product or a proposed solution. Some specific steps are involved, which we will be seeing in later classes also. So Phil Collins said, in learning you will teach, and in teaching you will learn. So the teacher also gets to learn and the students also gets to learn with each other. So hopefully this has not made a student into a sleep mode, but make them interested to learn more. Thank you.